I mean, has it ever been this exciting, Anthony? I can't contain myself.
Well, first, thanks, Kelly, for having me on. And it certainly is a resurgence in the medtech space, particularly U.S. medtech stocks. And you mentioned some of our top picks there, Medtronic. Certainly, GE has had a good run after the spin. That was a separation officially in the beginning of January of this year. And that name was up 55% year to date. You mentioned Medtronic up 12% year to date. Part of what we're seeing, Kelly, is certainly the comeback of surgical procedures.
Right.
Hospital companies are talking about this quite a bit. The HCAs of the world, first quarter, we certainly, did see some easy comps. So that was at play in the first quarter of 2023. But indeed, there's also some headwinds that are moderating and easing. One of the things we've heard about quite a bit through 2022 was the fact that there was staffing shortages in key areas within the hospital: radiology, cardiology, orthopedics. Some of those headwinds have alleviated. We're seeing that certainly. And that's not only a U.S. phenomenon, that's also OUS.
Sure.
So that has helped some of the volume picture here in 1Q. And we think for the most part in the U.S. that will continue into 2Q.
So tell me about the valuation for these names, which in many cases are still below where they were a year ago and trading. And what would be the catalyst? I mean, is it the next earnings season? What, other than, Cramer's bullishness, but like what would make people kind of wake up? And maybe it's the healthcare trade if the market turns more defensive and people want some to kind of be positioned both defensively, but maybe with a little bit of growth within the sector.
I think you're hitting the high points, Kelly. So a couple things. One is recession, right? And so healthcare is countercyclical. Medical device within healthcare is countercyclical. So I think that draws capital into these names. So that's a theme we're looking at and monitoring. I would say, secondly, some new end markets are really accelerating here. One that Medtronic is in and gaining share recently is the transaortic valve market, TAVRs. Those surgeries have really bounced back in the first quarter. Medtronic in particular has a new solution, Evolut FX. Our data tells us they're gaining share in that market category. So some idiosyncratic product categories, but also, again, the resurgence in procedures. And if we're thinking about the dreaded, R word into the second half, this is a space certainly where you can provide some cover.
Yeah, and Jim also was excited about, GE Healthcare saying they have scanners that are essential for Alzheimer's. That's obviously a really hot area right now. Last question about a risk factor, Anthony. What happens, with all the excitement over the weight loss drugs, could that mitigate the need for some of these medical device procedures in the future if it helps people shed weight and remove some of those risk factors?
Well, certainly, I think everyone in the medtech space would certainly, the folks that run these companies would certainly love to see that. But a lot of these conditions are chronic, they're progressive. Certainly, weight loss drugs can help. But for instance, we mentioned GE Healthcare. One of the drivers we think we're going to see with some of the weight loss drugs, Ozempic and others, is the need for MRI brain scans. You need to monitor for brain swelling when you're on one of these medications. And so we think that actually is a driver for MRI demand. We're seeing that in numbers now. GE CEO Peter Arduini spoke about that on the first Q earnings call. And we actually think that cycle is just starting to get going.
Wow.
Some of the other names that we are recommending here, Lantheus Imaging in the diagnostic space, that's had a great run, up about 80% year to date. We still think that's a double from here. On the small cap end, we're recommending ADMA Biologics, as well as Establishment Labs. And we think there's certain product cycles that are idiosyncratic to these names. And again, there's some counter-cyclical benefits to those companies as well. So there's plenty of room here to spread capital during a recession.
And that was Lantheus, LNTH, ADMA Biologics, ADMA, for those trying to catch up with this. That's fascinating about the need for MRI brain scans, too, as these medications take off. Anthony, thanks for your time and for diving into this with us today.
Kelly, thank you so much.
And happy birthday.
Thank you very much. Great to be on CNBC for the birthday.
There you go. No, I won't sing, but we appreciate it. We hope you enjoy. Anthony Petrone from Mizuho today.